I never planned to marry a Korean mafia boss, but when I inherited something powerful enough to destroy empires, he made me an offer no one else would dare: marriage, protection, and a choice that would cost us both control. Seoul was the kind of city that could make you feel anonymous and watched at the same time. That night, it did both. Rain clung to the streetlights and turned the sidewalks into mirrors. Neon spilled from storefront signs in liquid streaks: pink, blue, violet, like the city was bleeding color into the dark. I kept my head down and my coat tight, not because I was cold, but because the air had that feeling, that pressure. The kind you only notice when it's aimed at you. My phone buzzed in my pocket as I crossed the street. Unknown number. Stop walking. Do not look behind you. My steps didn't slow. My heart did something stupid. A hard, fast thud like it wanted to announce itself to the whole city. I didn't look behind me. I didn't stop. I kept going like I didn't understand English. Because I did. And I knew better than to react in public. My map app showed the cafe 1 block ahead. Small place, neutral neighborhood, bright windows. The kind of spot that pretended it didn't know what happened after midnight. I'd chosen it on purpose. Visible, busy, normal. Normal didn't mean safe, but it meant witnesses. I pushed through the door, bell chiming overhead, and the warmth hit me first. Coffee, sweet bread, steam. A couple hunched over laptops. A woman with a book. 2 students arguing quietly over something serious enough to ruin their night. I took a table near the back, eyes on the window. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. If you run, you die. My jaw tightened. I set my phone face down and took a breath that tasted like espresso and denial. I'd been in Seoul for 8 months. Long enough to learn how quickly this city rewarded you for minding your business. Long enough to learn that expat could be a shield or a target depending on who was watching. Tonight, someone was watching. I felt him before I saw him. The room didn't shift dramatically. No sudden hush, no obvious fear, but the energy changed, subtle and immediate. People glanced toward the door and then looked away like their eyes had been burned. A man walked in, Korean, mid-30s maybe, tall, lean, tailored black coat over a suit that wasn't trying to impress anyone, hair combed back with that understated precision men with money wear like a weapon. His face was sharp in the way a blade is sharp. Beautiful, yes, but not meant to be touched carelessly. He didn't scan the cafe. He didn't need to. He walked straight toward me. The stool across from me scraped softly as he pulled it out and sat down without asking. No smile, no greeting. Only the calm certainty of someone who never had to wonder if he was allowed. "Ms. Carter," he said in English. My spine went stiff. "Who are you?" I asked. He looked at me the way people look at weather, like I was real, but not surprising. "Kang Jae-min." My throat tightened. I'd heard the name before. Everyone in certain circles had heard it, whispered, usually, paired with phrases like quiet empire and the man behind the clean companies. A businessman if you asked the news, a phantom if you asked the police, a nightmare if you asked anyone who'd ever owed him. I forced my face to stay neutral. "I didn't invite you." "No," he agreed. "You invited attention. By existing. By buying something you didn't understand," he replied calmly. I kept my hands on the table so he could see they weren't shaking. "What are you talking about?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he set something on the table between us. A folder. Thin, clean, white. No labels. The kind of thing that didn't belong in a cafe unless the person holding it owned consequences. "You recently inherited shares in Hanai Holdings," he said. My stomach dropped. I'd gotten the email 2 days ago from a lawyer I'd never met. An unexpected inheritance from a man I'd been estranged from since I was 19. My father, absent, complicated, more ghost than parent, had died quietly, leaving behind paperwork that felt like a bad joke. I'd assumed it was some small stake, some sentimental gesture, something that would sit in my inbox until I dealt with my grief. I hadn't even replied yet. I haven't accepted anything, I said. Jaemin's gaze didn't move. That doesn't matter. My pulse pounded. What does matter? I asked. That those shares are not sentimental, he said. They are a key. A key to what? He leaned forward slightly, not looming, not aggressive, intimate in a way that made my lungs feel too small. To control, he said, to ownership, to access. I swallowed. I don't want it. I believe you, he replied. The ease of his certainty irritated me. You don't know me. He looked at me for a long beat, then said something that made my stomach turn. I know enough. Your father didn't have children he loved. He had leverage he neglected. I flinched before I could stop myself. He noticed. Someone else knows about the shares, he continued, and they believe if they take you, they take them. My mouth went dry. Take me? Jaemin's eyes stayed calm. Yes. I forced a breath. So why are you here? He opened the folder and slid one page toward me. A document, crisp and legal-looking, with Korean and English text. At the top, in bold, marriage agreement. My laugh came out sharp and disbelieving. You've got to be kidding. I don't, he said. This is... I tapped the page with one finger, like it might burn me. You're offering me a marriage contract? I'm offering you protection that no one will challenge. My hands curled into fists in my lap. No, I said flatly. Absolutely not. Jaemin didn't react. He didn't threaten me. He didn't raise his voice. He simply watched me like he'd expected the answer and already accounted for it. You're thinking like an American, he said. I stared. Excuse me? You believe refusal is the end of a conversation, he replied. Here, refusal is a position. People test it. I leaned back, heart hammering. Then let them test it. I can leave. Jaemin's gaze sharpened. You can, he agreed. And you will not make it to the airport. A chill crawled up my spine. That's fear, I said, forcing steel into my voice. No, he corrected. That's information. The cafe felt suddenly too bright, too loud. The students' voices turned distant. Steam hissed from the espresso machine like a warning. I lowered my voice. Why would you protect me? Because I prefer my problems contained, he said. I'm a problem? You're an unguarded asset, he replied. Which becomes a public mess if taken. I sat there staring at him, trying to find the angle that made this make sense. You want the shares? I said. He didn't deny it. I want them stable, he replied. I want them not in the hands of people who will use them to destabilize what I built. And you think marrying me does that? I said, disgust creeping into my tone. He leaned back slightly. In this city, he said, a wife is not just a woman. She is a boundary, an announcement. I hated how calm he was. How do I know you won't use me? I asked. He looked at me like I'd finally asked something worth asking. You don't, he said. So you negotiate. I blinked. You'd let me negotiate? His mouth curved faintly, not a smile, more like an acknowledgement. I would prefer you do. The audacity was almost impressive. You're assuming I'll even consider this, I said. He slid the folder closer. I'm assuming you want to live, he replied. My phone buzzed again. I didn't look down this time. I didn't want him to see whatever threat was waiting there. Jaemin's gaze dropped anyway, as if he already knew. They've been following you since the inheritance was filed, he said quietly. You came here because you thought visibility would protect you. I said nothing. You're intelligent, he continued, but you're alone. The word hit harder than it should have, because it was true. I'd built a life here. Friends, co-workers, routines, but none of it was the kind of not alone that mattered when danger sharpened. Jae-min set his hand on the table, palm down, controlled, not reaching for me, not touching, just anchoring the conversation in reality. This contract is not romance, he said. It is structure, boundaries, terms. Terms like what? I asked, voice tight. His gaze held mine. You keep your autonomy, he said. Your work, your name, your body. You owe me no intimacy. I blinked, surprised despite myself. You think I'd believe that? He didn't flinch. It's written, he said. I don't build agreements on lies. That would be inefficient. I stared at the page again, scanning the English section. It was meticulous. Duration clause, confidentiality, financial independence, security provisions, exit conditions. It read like a fortress made of paper. My throat tightened. What's the catch? I asked. Jaemin's eyes darkened slightly, like the answer wasn't pleasant but he'd give it anyway. The catch, he said, is that you must be seen with me. Publicly. Consistently. Convincingly enough that they stop considering you a weak point. So this wasn't about marriage, it was about visibility as a weapon. I swallowed. And if I say no? Jaemin's voice stayed calm. Then I will still try to keep you alive, he said. But I cannot protect someone who refuses to be protected. The words landed like a door closing. I stared at him. Rain and neon painting his face in soft edges that didn't match the cold precision of his tone. Why would you do any of this? I asked again, quieter now. What does it cost you? For the first time, he hesitated. Not long, just enough to make the air feel dangerous. It costs me control, he said finally, which is why I don't offer it lightly. My breath caught, because that sounded honest. And honesty from men like him was never free. Outside, a black sedan rolled slowly past the cafe, too smooth, too deliberate. Jaemin's gaze flicked toward it, then returned to me like the movement hadn't happened. They're close, he said. I felt my pulse spike. Naomi, he said softly, using my first name like it meant something, like he'd decided to. You can hate me later. You can leave when this is over. But tonight, you decide whether you want to survive long enough to have options. I stared at the contract. At the clean, brutal logic of it. At the reality pressing in beyond the glass. Then I looked back at him. Okay, I said. Jae-min didn't smile. He simply nodded once like he'd been waiting for the world to align. Good, he said. Then we set your terms. Jae-min didn't rush me. That should have been reassuring. Instead, it made everything feel heavier, like the moment mattered because he was allowing it to matter. We didn't leave the cafe together. That was deliberate. He stood first, sliding the folder back into his coat like it was just another document, just another decision already made. Finish your drink, he said quietly. Pay in cash. Walk out 5 minutes after me. And if I don't? I asked. His gaze held mine. Then this ends now. There was no threat in it. Just consequence. He left without looking back. The bell chimed. The cafe exhaled. Conversation crept back in like nothing important had just happened. I sat there for a full minute, staring at my untouched coffee, forcing my pulse to slow. Then I did exactly what he said. The car that picked me up wasn't black. It was gray. Ordinary. Forgettable. The kind of sedan you could walk past 100 times and never remember. The driver didn't speak. Neither did I. Seoul slid past the windows, neon and shadow giving way to quieter streets, cleaner buildings, money that didn't announce itself. We pulled into an underground garage that smelled like oil and concrete and something faintly metallic. The elevator ride up was silent. When the doors opened, I stepped into an apartment that looked like it belonged in an architectural magazine. Glass, stone, sharp lines, restrained luxury. No personal photos, no clutter, no softness. This wasn't a home. It was a control center. Jae-min stood near the windows. Jacket off now, sleeves rolled, phone in hand. He looked up when I entered. "You made it," he said. I said okay, I replied. That wasn't vague. A faint curve touched his mouth. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the table. This time, I didn't wait for permission. I took the chair opposite him and folded my hands, grounding myself. "You said I negotiate?" I said. "So let's negotiate." "Go on." I took a breath. "First, this is temporary." "Yes." "I want a defined end date," I continued. "Not when things settle, not when I decide." "A date?" He considered that. 6 months. 3, 5, 4, I said. He studied my face, then nodded once. 4. A surprising rush of relief hit my chest. "Second," I continued, "I keep my apartment. I don't move in with you. You'll have security." "I'll accept security," I said. "Not confinement." "Agreed." "Third," I said, "no access to my finances. No joint accounts. No monitoring my communications unless there is a direct, immediate threat." He lifted an eyebrow. "That limits my reach." "Good," I replied. Another pause. "Accepted," he said. "Fourth," I added, heart pounding now. "This is not sexual." His gaze sharpened, not offended, but attentive. "Meaning?" "Meaning no expectations," I said. "No performances. No implied obligations." Silence stretched. Then he said something that made my breath hitch. "I would not accept a wife who could be coerced," he said quietly. "So yes." I stared at him. "Is that written in?" I asked. "Yes." "And finally," I said, voice steadier now, "if at any point I want out, really out, you don't stop me." His eyes darkened slightly. "You understand that would end my protection?" "I understand," I replied. "I want the choice anyway." He leaned back, studying me like I'd just shown him something valuable. "You are not easy," he said. "I'm not trying to be," I replied. "I'm trying to stay alive without disappearing." Something unreadable passed through his expression. "Then," he said, "we are aligned." He slid a tablet across the table. The contract glowed on the screen, annotations already added. My conditions integrated, not footnoted. I read every line, twice. My signature looked strange at the bottom, too calm for what it meant. When I handed the tablet back, my hands were steady. "So what happens now?" I asked. "Now," Jae-min said, "we make this real." The first public appearance wasn't dramatic. It was calculated, a charity gala hosted by one of his legitimate subsidiaries. Art, culture, education. The kind of event where journalists smiled too much and donors drank expensive wine while pretending they weren't buying access. I arrived alone. That was part of the plan. The room buzzed with quiet curiosity when I entered, eyes noting me, placing me, failing to categorize me. I wore a simple black dress, tailored but understated. No jewelry except a thin band on my left hand. The ring felt heavier than it should have. I didn't see Jae-min at first. That too was intentional. When he entered 10 minutes later, the room shifted. Not loudly, not obviously, just enough. He crossed the space without haste and stopped beside me, close enough that his presence registered before his touch. He offered his arm. Not possessive, formal. I took it. Cameras didn't flash. Not yet. He leaned in slightly, voice low. Breathe. I am, I replied. Good, he said. You're doing well. I shot him a look. This isn't a performance review. A corner of his mouth lifted. Then he turned us toward the room. Introductions followed. Names, polite smiles, eyes lingered. On the ring. On the way, he stood beside me, not in front, not behind. Equal. That was when the whispers started. Not curiosity, calculation. I felt it like a pressure change in the room. Jaemin noticed too. Someone's watching, I murmured. Yes, he replied. Several someones. And? And they're confused, he said quietly. Which is exactly where I want them. We moved through the evening like that, measuring, presenting, existing as a unit, convincing enough to unsettle people who preferred their power lines clear. When it was over, the car ride back was silent. Not awkward. Just full. At my building, he walked me to the door. This worked, I said. Yes, he replied. And the shares? I asked. They're frozen, he said. For now. I hesitated, then asked the question that had been sitting in my chest since the cafe. Who's really behind this? His gaze met mine, sharp and serious now. Someone who believes family makes men predictable, he said. And wives expendable. My stomach tightened. And you? I believe, he said, that underestimating a woman is the fastest way to lose everything. For the first time that night, I smiled. Good, I said, because I'm not decorative. I know, he replied. That's why this might work. He stepped back, giving me space again, choice again. We continue tomorrow, he said. As he turned to leave, I realized something that both steadied and terrified me. This contract wasn't just protecting me. It was about to pull me directly into the center of his war. And for the first time since my father died, I wasn't running from the inheritance he'd left me. I was preparing to use it. The first move came disguised as politeness. That was how I knew it mattered. I received the invitation the next morning, hand-delivered to my office, thick cream envelope, embossed seal, no return address. The kind of stationery that existed to remind you that money didn't need to announce itself. Private shareholders Luncheon Hanai Holdings. My chest tightened. I hadn't even formally accepted the inheritance yet. The shares were frozen, the legal machinery stalled by Jaemin's intervention, but someone wanted me visible anyway. I called him immediately. They're forcing the issue, I said when he answered. Yes, he replied calmly. They want to see if you attend alone. And if I don't? Then they escalate. I closed my eyes. So we go. Yes, he said, together. The luncheon took place in a private room overlooking the Han River. Glass walls, white tablecloths, minimalist flower arrangements that cost more than my rent. Men in tailored suits turned when we entered. Not subtly. This wasn't curiosity. This was assessment. Jaemin didn't touch me as we walked in, not until we reached the table. Then his hand settled at my lower back, firm and unambiguous. Claim without spectacle. I felt it ripple through the room. A woman approached us almost immediately, elegant, mid-40s, smile practiced to perfection. Mrs. Kang, she said, eyes flicking to the ring, how lovely to finally meet you. I didn't correct her, neither did Jaemin. This is Director Park, he murmured to me, Hanai's interim chair. Interim. That was interesting. It's nice to meet you, I said, meeting her gaze evenly. Your father spoke of you rarely, she continued lightly, but always with complexity. Jaemin's hand tightened slightly. I'm sure, I replied. We took our seats. Conversation flowed around us. Markets, acquisitions, international expansion, but every word felt sharpened, aimed. Then Director Park leaned forward. Mrs. Kang, she said. Have you considered what you'll do with your shares once the freeze lifts? I smiled politely. I'm still evaluating. Of course, she said, but surely you'll want to appoint a proxy. Someone with experience. I glanced at Jae-min. He didn't intervene. He was watching me. I understood then. This was my moment. I've already appointed one, I said. Calmly. Director Park's smile faltered. Oh? Yes, I replied. My husband. The room went still. Jae-min turned his head slightly, just enough to look at me. Not surprised, but intent. Director Park recovered quickly. Mr. Kang has many responsibilities. Are you certain? I am, I said, cutting in gently. And I'm very comfortable with his judgment. That was the lie they expected. What they didn't expect was the truth underneath it. Lunch ended shortly after. When we were back in the car, Jae-min didn't speak at first. Then, you just shifted the board. I exhaled. They were circling. Yes, he agreed, and you stepped into the center. You said visibility was the point. It is, he said. Then quieter. But you didn't ask me first. I met his gaze. Would you have said no? A beat. No, he admitted. Then we're aligned, I said. Something in his expression changed. Not dominance, not control. Respect. They won't underestimate you again, he said. Good, I replied, because I'm done being the inheritance. That night, the threat surfaced openly. My apartment building was evacuated due to a gas leak. Convenient, clean, temporary. Jae-min didn't debate it. You're staying with me tonight, he said. This time, it wasn't negotiable. His residence wasn't cold like the control apartment. It was still minimalist, but warmer, lived in. Books, art, evidence of a man who chose restraint, not emptiness. He handed me a glass of water. You escalated, he said. So did they, I replied. Yes, he said, but now they've crossed into my home. The weight of that settled heavily. You didn't want me living with you, I said. I didn't want obligation, he corrected. This is necessity. I nodded. Temporary. Yes. But when we stood there, close and quiet, the word felt fragile. You did well today, he said. I wasn't acting. I know, he replied. That's why it worked. I hesitated, then asked, what happens if this goes wrong? He didn't evade it. Then I end it, he said simply. The contract? The threat? He replied. All of it. I believed him, and for the first time I realized something unsettling. I wasn't just protected by his power. I was influencing how he used it. The move didn't come through violence. It came through reputation. That was how I knew it was aimed at me. I found the article on my phone the next morning, circulating quietly, shared just enough to feel organic. Questions raised about Hanai Holdings' sudden marriage alliance. No names, no accusations that could be sued. Just implication. Foreign influence. Opportunism. A grieving daughter manipulated into a rushed marriage. A businessman using matrimony to consolidate power. I read it twice. Then I laughed once, sharp and humorless. Jae-min was already awake. He stood in the kitchen, coffee untouched, phone in hand. He didn't ask if I'd seen it. They're trying to isolate you, he said. By painting me as naive, I replied. Yes. And you, I added, as predatory. Yes. I met his gaze. Does that bother you? He considered the question. No, he said. What bothers me is that they think you'll retreat. I nodded. They don't know me. They will, he replied. The board meeting was called an hour later. Emergency session, closed doors, mandatory attendance. They want you alone, he said. I know. They want to test whether you'll defer, he continued. And if I do? Then they win leverage, he said simply. I set my phone down. Then I won't. The boardroom was all glass and polished wood, overlooking the river like it owned the view. Director Park sat at the head of the table. The others avoided my eyes. Jae-min did not take a seat beside me. That was deliberate. He stood at the back of the room, present but not intervening. This was my fight. Director Park began smoothly. Mrs. Kang, recent press has raised concerns about governance stability. I'm aware, I said calmly, and we'd like reassurance that your personal circumstances, my marriage, I said. Yes. I don't see how that's relevant to Hanai's performance, I replied. Unless you're suggesting the board evaluates leadership based on optics instead of results. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Director Park smiled thinly. Optics affect markets. So does instability, I said. Which is why I'll be voting today. Her smile froze. You haven't formally. I've accepted the shares, I said. Effective immediately. The room went very quiet. I'll also be appointing an independent audit, I continued. External. International. That's unnecessary, someone protested. It's mandatory, I replied. If you intend to keep your positions. Director Park leaned forward. You're overreaching. No, I said evenly. I'm establishing boundaries. I stood. This marriage does not make me ornamental, I continued. It makes me visible. And I suggest you decide quickly whether you intend to work with that or against it. Silence. Then Director Park looked past me, at Jae-min. He didn't move, didn't speak, didn't rescue. That was the moment I understood what partnership looked like in his world. Not dominance, trust. The retaliation came that night. Not at me, at him. A shipment seized, a permit delayed, a favor withdrawn. They were testing his patience. He didn't react. He adapted. And in doing so, he let me see something most people never did. How power recalibrated when it was challenged by someone it respected. You didn't need to step in, I said quietly later as we stood on the balcony overlooking the city. No, he agreed. You didn't need me to. That acknowledgement mattered more than any declaration. I don't want to be protected from consequence, I said. I want to understand it. He turned to face me fully. Then you must understand this, he said. They will come for you directly next. I didn't flinch. Then they'll find I'm not alone. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. Good, he said, because neither am I. And in that moment, under neon and night, and the quiet hum of a city that never forgave weakness, I realized something profound. This contract had stopped being about survival. It was becoming about control shared. They didn't call first. They never do when they think they've found the right pressure point. I was alone in the apartment mid-afternoon, the city muted by rain, when the doorbell rang. Once. Precise. Confident. Not security. Not Jae-min. I checked the monitor. A woman stood outside, late 40s, impeccably dressed, calm in the way people are when they believe they're holding all the cards. I opened the door anyway. Mrs. Kang, she said with a polite bow of her head. May I come in? I don't invite strangers into my home, I replied. She smiled faintly. Then I'll be brief. She handed me a slim envelope. No logo, no seal. Just wait. My name is Choi Sun-hee, she continued. I represent a consortium that has concerns about your husband's influence. I didn't take the envelope. And you thought coming here alone was wise? I asked. Oh, I'm not alone, she said lightly, and neither are you. That was the point. I stepped aside and let her in. We sat at opposite ends of the table, rain tapping against the windows like punctuation. You've been painted as naive, she said. Which is unfortunate, because you're clearly not. Get to the point, I replied. She slid the envelope closer. Inside were documents, bank statements, corporate transfers, shell companies unfolding like a map. Evidence. Your father was a conduit, she said. Not a mastermind. He moved money. He didn't decide where it went. I felt the familiar, unwelcome twist in my chest. And now? I asked. Now you've inherited a position that places you at the center of a long-standing imbalance, she said. One your husband has exploited well. I kept my face neutral. We can remove you from that position, she continued. Cleanly, quietly, permanently. My pulse slowed. How? She met my gaze. You divorce Kang Jae-min, she said. Publicly, decisively. And in exchange? I asked. She didn't hesitate. Your shares are liquidated at a premium, she said. Your name disappears from every ledger that matters. You leave Seoul with more money than you'll ever need. And my husband? I asked. Her smile thinned. He loses leverage, not power. He'll survive. I leaned back, studying her. This is a bribe, I said. This is an exit, she corrected. I laughed softly. You think I married him for protection? She blinked. That was new. You married him because you thought he was safer than us, she said. No, I replied. I married him because he told me the truth. Silence settled. And because, I continued, he never offered me escape in exchange for obedience. Choi studied me carefully now. You're choosing danger, she said. I'm choosing agency, I replied. And if he falls? She pressed. I stood. Then he falls standing, I said. Like a man who didn't sell the people beside him. I opened the door. You should leave, I said, before my husband decides your presence here was a mistake. Choi rose slowly, adjusting her jacket. You'll regret this, she said calmly. Maybe, I replied. But not today. When the door closed, my hands shook for exactly 3 seconds. Then they steadied. Jae-min came home an hour later. He didn't ask questions at first. He read my face the way he always did, like it was a language he'd learned carefully. They came to you, he said. Yes. What did they offer? Freedom, I replied. His jaw tightened. And? I declined. He went very still, not angry, not relieved. Something deeper. They won't stop now, he said quietly. I know. You could have left, he continued, with no consequences. I met his gaze. That would have been the consequence. Silence stretched between us. Then he said something I hadn't expected. Thank you. Not for loyalty, for choice. They made a mistake, he continued. They assumed the marriage was my shield. I stepped closer. It's not, I said. It's my line. He exhaled slowly, the weight of months settling into clarity. Then this ends, he said, cleanly. How? By removing the assumption, he replied, that you can be negotiated around. The end came quietly, audits completed, evidence released, key figures resigned. For personal reasons, the consortium fractured under scrutiny it couldn't redirect. No arrests, no explosions, just power collapsing under daylight. Hanai stabilized, the shares transferred into a blind trust, with me as final authority. And one morning, as the city woke without knowing what it had almost lost, Jae-min handed me a document. This is the termination clause, he said. If you want it. I looked at it, then at him. And if I don't? I asked. Then the contract ends anyway, he said. And what remains is us. I signed nothing. Instead, I folded the paper carefully and set it aside. I didn't survive all of this to be temporary, I said. He studied me, then nodded once. Neither did I. 6 weeks later, Seoul adjusted. It always did. The whispers faded. The boardrooms recalibrated. My name became something people spoke carefully, if at all. I kept my work, my voice, my stake. He kept his empire, but leaner, quieter, harder to destabilize. We didn't pretend love fixed everything. We treated it like power, something you chose daily with awareness of the cost. Our marriage stopped being a contract the day neither of us needed it to stay. And when people asked, carefully, how it had begun, I smiled. On paper, I said. And where did it end? They'd ask. I'd think of rain on glass, of a city that never paused, of a man who never mistook control for ownership. It didn't, I replied. It held. You've been listening to Obsidian Audio Vault. If you want more stories like this, subscribe. The vault opens again soon.